Hello everyone, myself Dr. Pallavi Rai Lavhale and I am presently working as Principal and Professor at Ramesh Institute of Vocational and Technical Education. I will be teaching you the Pharmacognosy-I subject, Unit 1, and today we will start with the first unit, that is Definition, History and Development of Pharmacognosy. So, you must have heard about that many times we use herbal drugs, जो जड़ी बूटियाँ हैं, in that kind of drugs are generally used traditionally by many people from many years. However, there is no scientific validation which was done earlier, but in last 200 to 300 years a lot of research is being done, lot of studies have been done, and after that we have come up with a new concept of pharmacognosy, and which we have been learning since few centuries. So, it is a new concept. However, the scientific basis or the data which we have, that covers almost thousands of years. Like you must have heard about Ayurveda, Siddha system or homeopathic system or many of the folk medicines also. But when we are studying pharmacy, in pharmacy what is the role of these herbal drugs, that we are going to learn through this subject of pharmacognosy. So, this subject pharmacognosy, it deals mainly with the crude drugs from which we isolate or we use it as it is for the treatment of various ailments. Now, we shall move to the basic definition of pharmacognosy. So, this term pharmacognosy, it is derived from two terminologies. One is the pharmakon, which means a drug. The name for drug is pharmakon, while the other part of cognosy comes from gignosko, and this gignosko means to acquire knowledge of. Okay. So, here we have pharmakon and gignosko coming together as pharmacognosy. So, I can say it that the knowledge or science of drugs is pharmacognosy. Okay. But you have also learned the definition of pharmacy, and pharmacy is also the study or knowledge of drugs. Okay. So, what is the difference between pharmacognosy and pharmacy? So, the answer comes that basically pharmacognosy can be defined as a branch of bioscience which deals with the study of crude drugs. Here we have to specify that we are here discussing only about the crude drugs and not the pure or the synthetic drugs. So, the branch of bioscience which deals with the study of crude drugs obtained from natural sources like plants, animals, mineral as well as marine sources. Okay. So, this is the basic definition of pharmacognosy, and this pharmacognosy, it is not that it is a very you can say a new term or a new development, but this has been coming from many years. This is not a new thing, new concept, it is a very old concept, but it is coming from many years, and earlier it was known as materia medica. The prior name for pharmacognosy was materia medica. And later on what happened, the history says that there are two scientists who are responsible for the renaming of materia medica to pharmacognosy. So, there is always a debate going on that who was the scientist who named the pharmacognosy. So, one name which comes is C.A. Hedler. He was a medical student, and in 1815 he wrote a thesis, and the name for the thesis was Analecta Pharmacognostica. It was Analecta Pharmacognostica. So, this name Pharmacognostica was given by him on the thesis, and the scientific people or the whole pharmacognosist, they liked this term and they started using pharmacognosy instead of materia medica. Another case says that J.A. Schmidt, He is from Vienna, and he also termed that pharmacognosy term was given in his one of his books named Lehrbuch der Materia Medica in 1811. Okay. So, there is a kind of a debate that who was the first scientist who named this pharmacognosy. So, we have two names basically, let us give credit to both of them, C. A. Sadler as well as G. A. Schmidt. So, now we are clear with the definition of pharmacognosy. Now, we will discuss about the history of pharmacognosy. So, if we go from the primitive era when we did not have any civilized society, from that time itself, it is not that people were not ill at that time, people used to be ill at that time also. Okay. So, when man or the you can say that aged man in that age, when they used to travel, they used to collect different plants, fruits, even animals, and on consumption the effect which they got, they used to you can say they could not write anywhere. So, that was sent to their generations, from ancestors to the future generations. This information was transferred that if you eat this thing, it is not going to cause any harmful effect. It means that this is your food, you are getting energy out of it. If you eat this thing, then it is able to treat you. So, you can use it for this particular ailment. And the third thing, that if any side effect is caused or a poisoning is caused, then they used to inform it to their future generations that this is something which may cause either vomiting, or it can cause some kind of poisoning or diarrhea or stomach ache, like that. Okay. So, this knowledge that whether there is no harmful effect, then it is food. If there are certain effects, like it is treating certain symptoms. For example, if I tell you, if you take one ginger tea, when we take ginger tea, we feel a relaxing effect in our throat, right. So, that is an experience where we feel yes, it is good for sore throat or cough. Okay. So, that experience when they used to have that they are eating something and it is helping in relieving from any kind of symptom, that was considered to be in the other effects. And the third category was that if it caused any specified action like diarrhea or vomiting, or it is say a poisonous compound. So, they used to inform that these drugs have these effects. So, we can say that the knowledge of pharmacognosy, it was very empirical and it was obtained only by trial and error method. By trial and error, they used to consume it, okay, it's poisoning ho gayi, so we should not consume it. If they are eating it, they felt that the sore throat is getting cured, so we can use it for sore throat. Like that, they started segregating the drugs and having information about the drugs. Later on, they started making certain formulations, like they prepared infusions, decoctions from the same drug, like we are preparing tea. Okay. What do we do in tea? We are preparing a decoction out of tea, right, or if we use the tea bag one, we are preparing an infusion out of the tea. So, that kind of preparation started from that era itself. And these results passed on from generation to generation, and in this way the knowledge was getting transferred. Now, if we go to the civilized society, so the primitive civilized societies are mainly considered to be these 5 regions. I will not call them countries, but the regions, like the Indian subcontinent, the Egyptian area, the Chinese region, the Greek region, as well as the Roman part. So, in Europe we have Greek as well as Roman part, in Africa we have Egypt, and in Asia we have China and India. The Americans, mainly the Red Indians, also had their own history, although it is not very much well documented. We have few drugs which come from North America and South America, but their information is not that much as compared to these 5 regions. So, we are focusing mainly on these 5 regions, and when we talk about history, you know that if we start studying history, it is sometimes boring. So, why not to have it region wise? So, we can just focus on that area and it will become easier for our understanding as well. So, I will start with China, because China is you can say the traditional Chinese medicine today is accepted worldwide. It is accepted worldwide due to its quality, efficacy, and the way they have tried to provide scientific evidences for their drugs. So that is why Chinese system of medicine is you can say accepted worldwide. Now here if we look back at the history of China, it has been seen that the Chinese emperors knew that health is one of the key factors of ruling an empire. Okay. So what happened that at that time the emperors used to have this entire, you can say, rights of performing research and studies on drugs themselves. It was a royal thing. Okay. It was a royal thing. Only the emperors could follow the medicines. Other people could not do any kind of research or studies on any drugs at that time. So the emperors have only written many books and all, and out of that the most famous emperor Shen Nung, his name was Shen Nung, in about 2700 BC, he has written a book named Pen Ti Sao. It is pronounced as Pen Ti Sao or native herbal, and this herbal, it records around 365 drugs. So it has 365 drugs. So if you just count, there is one drug for one day, right? We have 365 days. So in this book you have one drug for one day. But very smartly he has classified these 365 drugs into three categories: 120, 120 and 125. In the first category, they have kept the emperor drugs only. Okay, so they are the 120 emperor drugs. So why are they called emperor drugs? The reason being, these drugs are food grade drugs. Like if I compare with modern times, the way many people use nutraceuticals, you know, the affluent people, they use nutraceuticals and supplements. So these are those drugs which are giving certain nutrition, supplementation, longevity, rejuvenation to the people. So it is for a better health. It is not for a normal health. It is for a better health, better longevity, better life. So those drugs, if I give you certain examples like ashwagandha, you must have heard of ashwagandha. Then you have tulsi. Okay. So these drugs, when we consume, we feel rejuvenated. Okay. So these drugs, if you consume on daily basis also, it is going to have your improved health, like even turmeric for that matter. So such drugs were categorized under the emperor drugs. So they were the food grade quality, which are non-toxic and can be taken in large quantities to maintain health over a long period of time. The second category had 120 minister drugs. So minister drugs are those drugs which are actually the drugs which are given at certain time when a person suffers from certain disease symptoms. Okay. So they are mildly toxic in nature and they have certain therapeutic action to heal the diseases. Okay. So if we see, like for example, if we talk about any drug which is healing a minor disease like for headache or for stomach ache or certain other skin problems, when we are using certain drugs, they come under the minister drugs where a minor symptom is there and we have a drug which is very mildly toxic in nature, but at the same time it is treating the patient. The third category, that is the 125 minister drugs. Okay. Now this third category is, you can say, one of the most important, as well as it is the main category, I would say, which deals with the therapeutic drugs. Okay. So here the drugs, they have specific action, they have a specific action, but at the same time they can be highly toxic in nature. For example, if I talk about digitalis, a drug used on the heart, or if I talk about morphine, which we use as a sedative or a analgesic. Okay. Now these drugs, morphine, digitalis, these drugs are basically very poisonous in nature. Okay. But when given for treatment, they show their effect also. So emperor drugs are those drugs which have very fast effect also, but at the same time they are toxic also. So these are the 125 drugs. Then we come to the ancient Egypt era. Ancient Egypt era gives many of the books like Aber's Papyrus, which was written in 1550, and it has 800 prescriptions containing 700 drugs. So, this book has a compilation of around 700 drugs. The second book is Edwin Smith Papyrus 1600 BC, and it mainly deals with the surgical instructions, formulas for cosmetics, etc. And the third book is Kahun Medical Papyrus, which is one of the oldest books which mentions about the health of women, including birthing instructions, which are a very important thing because many deaths used to take during childbirth itself. So, these are the three main, you can say, books mentioned in ancient Egypt, which are very important from the history point of view of Egyptian culture. And the drugs which they have mentioned are mainly senna, honey, thyme, juniper, cumin. These were the drugs mentioned for the digestive system. Pomegranate root, henbane for the worms, flax, aloe, caraway, cedar, coriander, fennel, garlic, onion, many more drugs have been mentioned in these books, and they are till date used as natural drugs. Next is our own country, that is India. What is the traditional, you can say traditional history of India? We know very well that we have a very rich knowledge of Ayurveda, as well as in South India we have Siddha system. So, Ayurveda and Siddha, you can say, are the grassroots of our medicinal system. Whenever we use any drug, our basis comes from Ayurveda itself, and somewhere our culture also is based on the Ayurveda itself. And the main books, we know many Vedas written in our culture, out of which Rig Veda and Atharva Veda, which were written in very ancient times, mention the Ayurveda in their text. And based on this Ayurvedic knowledge, 3 scriptures which have been very well studied as well as scientifically validated are the Charak Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, and Ashtanga Hridayam Samhita. So, these 3 books, mainly Charak Samhita, it deals with many drugs, formulations, prescriptions which are written in this entire compilation by Charak, Rishi Muni Charak. Shushruta Samhita was written by Rishi Muni Sushruta, and he has compiled the surgery part in Sushruta Samhita. Yes, in ancient part itself people were into surgery. Okay, so it is not anything new, surgery was being done, and yes, there may be issues of infections and all, so that used to also be controlled by the method of heating and boiling. So, this is mentioned in Shushruta Samhita. And Ashtanga Hridayam Samhita was another compilation of many drugs which are used for various ailments. There are few minor books also like Sangdhara Samhita, Bhav Prakasha Samhita, and Madhava Nidanam Samhita, which are compiled. And if we look briefly, Ayur means life, while Veda means the knowledge or science. So, the knowledge or science of life is Ayurveda, and in short it covers many things, and the main basis of Ayurveda is to upgrade or you can say improve the health of a person. Only absence of ailment is not good health, but well-being of the physical, spiritual as well as mental health is very much important as per Ayurveda. Now, we look at the history of ancient Greece and Roman system. I have combined both of them because as such you will not find any differentiating factors, their history is somewhat merged. Okay. So, Hippocrates, who is the father of medicine, we all know Hippocrates is the father of medicine. He is the first person of the Greece history who has given many, you can say, information about different types of drugs. For example, he gave us information about hydrotherapy, temperature therapy, even the use of cumin, opium, etc. Aristotle, Theophrastus, Dioscorides, Pliny and Galen were his followers, and they have done their own bit in the form of studying various drugs from animal kingdom or the plant kingdom, or studying different drugs through microscopy, or preparing different formulations which could be administered to the patients. So, this was in brief the history of pharmacognosy, and now we come to the development of pharmacognosy. So, basically in earlier phases what used to happen, people used to just collect certain information and document it, and that used to be the pharmacognosy. But in later stages, since last 100-200 years, what has happened that people have started using scientific techniques and studying this subject, and it has been seen that various other you can say subjects like organic chemistry, biochemistry, pharmacology, these analytical chemistry, these systems have helped in development of our entire pharmacognosy subject as a whole, and now we just do not focus on the drug itself, but we try to study its chemistry, we try to study its pharmacological effects, etc. Okay. So, what are the main ways in which we can develop the pharmacognosy? So, basically before going to that slide, we would like to discuss that what were the major steps which initiated the development stage. In that, the first one was isolation of penicillin in 1928 by William Fleming, then isolation of reserpine from Rauwolfia roots, also isolation of morphine by Sir Turner, isolation of Vinca alkaloids, as well as the study of steroid hormones like progesterone and doing their partial synthesis. And the ways in which they can be developed, for that we have few points mentioned here. The first point is isolation of phytochemicals. When we are able to isolate different chemical constituents from a particular drug. For example, if we are able to isolate vitamin C from amla, that is the isolation of the phytoconstituent, or morphine from opium, or digoxin from digitalis. Okay. These are few examples that when we start isolating the active constituents, so rather than giving the crude drug, we can directly give the isolated component and increase its effect. Okay. So, that is the first point. Second is structure activity relationship, or the SAR. Our body and the natural things, they have some kind of alignment, and that is known as the receptor ligand alignment. So, if we start studying the relationship between the receptor proteins in our body as well as the drug molecules present in the plant, we will be able to better justify the role of these plant constituents in our body and their therapeutic efficacy. Then the drug obtained by the partial synthesis of natural products, like we saw progesterone. So, we have certain constituents in plant also, like diosgenin, which is a steroidal drug. So, if we are able to synthesize progesterone from diosgenin, it will help us in production of such natural components itself, and that is how again we are able to develop the subject of pharmacognosy. Then natural products as model for synthesis of new drugs. Those substances which can become, if we know the structure of a particular substance and we are able to redesign it into a new synthetic molecule with similar or better effects, that will be also beneficial. We can study the direct therapeutic uses of these drugs and also elucidate the biosynthetic pathways. And lastly, if we come to the scope of pharmacognosy, we have scope of pharmacognosy in academics like teaching in colleges, institutions, or botanical research organizations or gardens. Then we have the private industry where we do the manufacturing, production, quality control, testing, everything of the herbal drugs. There a pharmacognosist can work. and in government sector we can do placements in federal agencies like the Drug Enforcement Agency, the Food and Drug Administration of the US FDA. Okay, we can work in the US Department of Agriculture, Medicinal Plant Research Laboratories, agencies like forensic laboratories, environmental laboratories, and in India we can also work in the Ministry of Ayush in various research organizations like CCRAS, etc. So, we have many different areas where we can work if we have the knowledge of pharmacognosy. So, these are the references, and thank you very much for this lecture.